Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you how I turned this old muddy floor into this fantastic terracotta one using reclaimed tiles. Now, to obtain the right ground level I had to dig down maybe 12 inches, but we finally got there. We hit a lot of bedrock as well, but we're now at the stage where we can clean it off and get it all leveled up. The rammed earth floor was a traditional flooring method in Normandy, especially in these old farmhouse buildings. It allowed moisture to evaporate and would have compacted down quite nicely and was quite easy to clean, believe it or not. But it just wasn't the look that I was after. The next job was to make sure I had no high spots. Now, this would have made it rather difficult to tap down the new terracotta onto the lime mix. The next job was to cover the whole entire floor. It's roughly about 6 metres with a breathable membrane. Now, this works in conjunction with the lime and the gravel. Quite an old technique actually, apart from the membrane. Now, I decided to use this because I thought, well, it's going to keep the gravel clean. If I get any moisture entering the floor area and it turns a little bit mushy, it's going to keep the clay away from the gravel. So that was my theory behind that. But before the membrane was laid in place, there was a few low spots that I just wanted to fill up with some limecrete. This will aid for a nice flat floor. We did recently have some bizarre weather where there was floodwater coming through from the back of the cottage right the way through the front door, and I think this created some voids in the floor. I figured that if I'd have used a damp-proof membrane on the floor, then maybe the moisture would have travelled up through the walls, which was something I definitely didn't want, especially in an old building like this. So the next job was quite a few buckets of gravel. Now, this helped in several ways. It created a barrier between the clay and the lime, which would help naturally aerate the floor, and also to level off the floor. This was quite important because it wasn't very flat. So laying down over 1 inch of gravel just provides me a little bit of a safety net should I get any more water into the cottage. The next job was to rake and level out the gravel. Now, this is great stuff. It took up quite a lot of the undulation in the floor and give me a nice level surface to add my lime mix to. Now, you can use other aggregates for this job. Sometimes they're round and they're made from all different materials, but I went for this. So once the whole surface was covered with the membrane and the gravel went down, it was then on to the next process. And that was just a simple job of going over it with the float and the straight edge, just flattening down any high spots and building up any low spots. This made for the perfect conditions for laying the tiles down on. I would say by about this stage of the job I'd probably done about a day's work, and that was including getting the materials as well, so it was well underway. Then, after lots of preparation, it was the fun part. Laying these beautiful old tiles. They're 250 years old and reclaimed from a convent. Now, that's not to say that they didn't come with their challenges, because they did. They're all handmade, they're all different shapes and sizes. But I figured that was well worth the trade-off between old and new. This is especially important, particularly when you're after a period look. I just wanted it to look like they'd always been there. That's the real advantage when you're using reclaimed materials. I decided to use the staggered pattern. I figured that it was much more forgiving with the different shaped tiles, and I'd visited many period properties here in France and England where this method had been used. The one drawback of using reclaimed materials is they need cleaning, but it's well worth it. These tiles were extra dirty because someone had laid an additional floor on top of that one, so they had mortar on both sides. Took some cleaning. The mix I decided to use was a 3-in-1, which is 3 parts sharp sand and 1 lime. This gives it enough flexibility but enough strength to hold the tiles in place. I found the best way to level these was with a piece of timber that roughly spanned 3 or 4 tiles. That way you wasn't going to get too many low and high spots. It also helps if the tiles are damp, but not wet. This helps with adhesion to the lime. Another consideration to think about is the fact that they're handmade, they're all different thicknesses, so plan this into your job. It helps in the long run. I also found leaving a 5mm gap all the way around allowed for a little bit of tolerance and a good grout gap. I was really pleased how it come out. This kind of gave me a bit of wind in my sails to carry on outside. Yep, you guessed it, more cleaning. The actual laying of the tiles didn't take me too long. This is where I spent most of my time, days in actual fact. Lots of blisters and sore fingers, but you know, if it's hard gained, it's probably worth it in the end. Fortunately for me, there hadn't been any cement used on either side of the tiles, so what was on there did scrape off. Giving the tiles a pre-soak and cleaning them as I went definitely did help and speeded up the process. But I just wish I had this fast forward button when I was doing it. Now the word terracotta comes from the Latin burnt earth, which is simply clay and water mixed and fired at a high temperature. Then you have a terracotta tile. Now these can come glazed and unglazed. I'm using the unglazed version. Terracotta has been used as a building material for centuries and goes right back to the Greeks. I was keen to use terracotta for several reasons really. A, it breathes, and B, the actual floor of the cottage is made from clay, so it's just in another form really. Now when it comes to sealing these tiles, I'll probably use a boiled linseed. I need something that's going to breathe. That was the whole idea of using these. I didn't actually need to cut any tiles, I just used all the offcuts. All of the outer tiles wouldn't be seen anyway, they'd be underneath the cabinet. So just on the home stretch now, the last few are going in. So if you're planning a project and thinking of using reclaimed materials, there's a few things that you need to consider first. Sometimes the materials are imperfect and can be broken, or could need additional cleaning. It's not always the cheapest option, and can be hard to match if you run out. Plan in advance. And don't forget, if you've got any questions, just drop us a comment. I'll do my best to reply straight back to you. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone that follows me, supports me and watches my videos. Yep, a big thank you to you all. Without you, I couldn't do it on my own. Next up, I need to construct a pier with my leftover materials. It really has given it a soft, natural feel with all those lovely hues in the tiles. Next, I sweep in a dry mix of lime and soft sand. This will help lock all the tiles together. It's not the final finish, I shall do a wet mix for that one, but that will be at the end of the project. Sweeping the sand around also buffs up the surface of the terracotta tiles. Should I need to clean the terracotta tiles, I shall use a mixture of white vinegar and water. Once the protective coating goes on, they really will shine. At this stage, if I was to drop something heavy on it, like a granite sink, I could easily replace a single tile. It's quite surprising on how much of the mix disappears in the gaps. This is quite a lengthy process and has to be done several times. Just sweep it backwards and forwards, different directions. As you walk over it, it will settle again and cracks will appear, but just keep sweeping it in. Eventually you'll fill the voids up. Okay, that's nicely swept in now. That will protect the floor as well. Our next job is I've got to build a pier here. This will enable me to keep it all level, nice and strong and secure, and again creating some force against the base of this wall. So just tie this area in nicely. Really be walking on it yet, but hey, I can't wait for weeks on end. Right, let's get this pier built. Another job off the list. So I'm just using up all the leftover materials to create this. I could have gone out and got one with a closed end like this one here, but I'm just going to use what I've got. It tidies the place up as well as I go. Just got to create a channel in there. This one was already pre-cut with the lug off, which happens to fit neatly in there, but it is upside down. So we're just going to create a channel for the rebar. Again, just reusing all of the offcuts. Perfect. spot on actually. I just simply infill like so. Don't forget it's all going to be rendered. Something like that up against it. Yeah, we'll get some limecrete in there. Now you may be thinking to yourself, isn't this a bit of overkill just for a worktop? Maybe I've got some other plans for this area. And the more I agitate it and vibrate it down, the further forward it will come into these gaps in the block. I want a bit of a key when I render the front. Then as you look at the floor, it pretty much looks like it's always been there, doesn't it? And then once I'm ready to do the final grout mix, we'll do a wet one. Any movement would have settled down by then. Just allows me enough to get a wet grout mix around each tile. So I'm going to continue knocking up my limecrete to fill these voids up at the back, tie all the structure together, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now.